John Scott, Vic Carucci, Jonathan Acosta. We're shuffling the deck and getting Vic a microphone for himself for the first time in over a year now.
I'm honored.
we're jumping straight into mandatory minicamp with full steam ahead, and we'll jump right into the number one topic, which was James Cook going to be here? You had said previously that you had heard that he was in the building on Monday. Sure enough, he not only was here for the start of mandatory minicamp, but fully participating.
Yeah, that part really did surprise me a bit because I wasn't sure, even though he was here, if we were going to see him on the field, and we certainly did. He fully participated, looked like he was into it, didn't sense anything from the body language that would indicate a guy who was disgruntled. Now, I'm sure he's not happy with the way negotiations are going because it doesn't seem as if it's coming anywhere close to what he's looking for money-wise, but he's at a point and has the realization that, first of all, not being here during mandatory minicamp results in a fine, and two, to get his money, he's just going to have to play through this season and be great.
And you heard from Cook as well and his thoughts on the reasons behind being here.
Well, yeah, he said that it's important if this team wants to win a Super Bowl, which is something he wants to accomplish with this team, it's important for him to be out here on the field with his teammates, whether it's here, we would assume whether that's in training camp, and sort of realizing the situation. I think it says a lot that Josh Allen and Sean McDermott sort of complimented Cook for being here, saying, Josh Allen specifically saying there are other teammates, other guys who would not be here in Cook's same situation. So I think everyone sort of realizes this is yet to be fully resolved, but it means a lot for both Cook and for the team that he's here right now.
And that's the key, is now looking forward. We got past the first little checkpoint here of the James Cook after missing all of the voluntary off-season workouts and OTAs. Next stop is training camp after this week concludes. Cook saying, I will be there, but didn't dismiss the possibility, at least, of a hold in or just maybe not being as fully invested and engaged and on the field as he was here today.
Yeah, the part of it that you've got to look at when you're a player seeking a new deal and you don't have that new deal and there is no certainty that that new deal is going to happen in the course of not only the summer but this season, is that injury risk possibility. Now, you know, being injured while you're playing games that matter, that's one thing, but being injured in practice at training camp, and that's usually where those difficulties come in play or challenges for a player who is seeking that deal. So does he do the hold-in thing? First of all, he's making the statement of his displeasure over the contract, but also avoiding the risk of being injured and therefore hurting his chances for the new deal. My sense is that he is going to be participating in camp. I don't think he's going to be there and be a distraction by not playing and having us every day ask the question, when is James Cook going to be on the field?
Right, and obviously the actions on social media and everything show his displeasure, but he didn't come out here and talk like someone who is super disgruntled with the team. Made the acknowledgement, hey, I know business is business. He was asked about other teammates in his draft class that have signed contracts, and he said that's none of his business. That's good for them. That doesn't impact him or the way he views what's going on. So I think he's sort of a guy where we've talked about coming into this situation, he doesn't have a whole ton of leverage. So his best course of action is come in, maybe play out this contract, and I think he's sort of seeing that and saying, okay, let me be out there with my teammates, not make a situation that might already have some tension, not make it any worse.
Vic, in your experience, in the hold-in situation, how does that actually take place in terms of the player saying, all right, I'm here, so you can't find me, but not taking the field when the coaching staff is clearly saying it's time to practice?
It's become, I'm going to say, unfortunately, a very popular tactic for players and their representation. There's a lot of discussion, and I've explored this with players on other teams for the work I do with SiriusXM NFL Radio when we've talked about prominent players, quote, holding in. But it is the new way and of how a player tries to get what he's seeking. Sometimes, I'm not saying the act itself results in it, but sometimes the holding in occurs and then a deal happens for the player. I'm not as confident that this is going to happen for James Cook if we're assuming that $15 million a year average that he was so public about is the thing he's after, because I don't see in any way that the Bills want to go to that level. There is a number but is there one that both sides would agree with? And it was interesting. James Cook was asked, why he felt the need to go public or why he thought that was a good idea. He didn't really have a good answer for it. He just said, and he was even asked, was it a negotiating strategy? He said, no. He just said it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where every contract negotiation is very different, especially when you compare his to the way that it went with the other guys who got extensions, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, guys like that. A lot of quiet, and then deals got done. So maybe is it something where maybe he regrets the way he handled it earlier in the offseason? We don't know that, but what we do know is that he's here right now, and it seems like he's sort of maybe not putting it in the past, but saying, hey, I'm here to focus on football right now, and he even said that the deal gets done when it gets done.
I'll give him some credit because we know you don't really hear much at any point in his tenure here from James Cook.
Yes.
Very soft-spoken, very short sentences and responses, not out of disrespect or discontent. That's just the guy that he is. I did something with him years ago, and I actually got him to smile, and I thought it was like the greatest achievement of my career that he actually was a little bit engaging here. He was open about this situation today, probably more so than anyone anticipated. So that at least, take it for what it's worth, but it's not like this is a guy who's going into a shell saying, all right, I'm not going to say anything one way or the other. Let's push ahead to the other guy who was absent last week, and that was Josh Allen, who came up to the podium and said, yeah, I'm back. It's back to football. I just got a little more hardware, and then did a nice little dance around all of our other questions about anything relating to the wedding. A week off, we know who Josh is. We know what we're really looking at and evaluating here in this practice setting of minicamp. But it was not a good day for Josh Allen and the Bills' offense.
No, it wasn't. It was rough. He looked like a guy that still needs more time and timing with the newer targets he has and even the familiar ones he has, and maybe even coping with some of the schematic changes on defense as well. The defense definitely was getting the better of most of this practice. Not that means anything in a mandatory minicamp or any sort of practice this time of year or even in training camp, but it was noticeable. And, 3 interceptions, a deflection. Joe Andreessen benefiting the most with a pick and a nice deflection of a pass by Allen. I don't know what I take from that other than maybe when we heard Joe Brady say last week that this offense is evolving, that there has to be some changes schematically. Every team's got to do it to stay ahead of the competition, that Josh is catching up with those changes.
Yeah, and that's something he specifically was asked about and talked about, where Brady says, for all of the good things that we did last year, this has to be a new season, a new page. And Allen says, yeah, here in minicamp specifically is one of those times of the year where you're really implementing those new changes. Practices like the one like he had today, we've seen what he does on the field in actual games. Those sorts of practices happen to every quarterback X amount of times over the course of an offseason, even in training camp, even during the regular season. I think, like you mentioned, Andreessen, I think it's something where maybe you more notice it and make note of it on that sort of thing, where he makes the catch on the interception. And then I was maybe even more impressed on the pass deflection, where he's sort of backpedaling. I think it's Dawson Knox running like a corner route, and then he kind of goes up and makes a really nice play on the ball. So I think it's one of those situations where you have to kind of have nuance and be like, what do I take more out of it? We know who Josh Allen is, so you kind of look at it more from the perspective of what the defensive player is.
And Josh even was asked afterwards and acknowledged, this is the setting where you try things. You don't need to be perfect in this setting. So if it's, all right, can I make that throw in that window? And clearly, maybe some of the times he couldn't. He even screwed around and was on his knees and threw a dart for a completion and then just was pumping up the rest of the offense on a play in the midst of a practice that was clearly not their best. But again, we've watched enough of these to ingest it through the right lens and perspective to say, hey, it was not a great day for Josh, but no panic whatsoever.
I wanted to come back to that play, though, because it's one of those things where, again, you don't take all too much from these practices, but it was one of those moments that reminds you of sort of like the athleticism of these players, because I think he falls down on he tripped right, and then he's on his knees and rips one to Curtis Samuel over the middle, and it's kind of just one of those like, wow, that's why he gets paid what he gets paid. That's why who he is, because there aren't a lot of humans on earth who can make that sort of throw, even in kind of the low-key setting of a mandatory minicamp.
And I also found it interesting because there were multiple questions about this being a very different offseason. I mean, the guy getting married, that's a big life-changing event. The guy gets the contract with the highest guaranteed money that any player in NFL history has gotten, another life-changing event. And, he won the MVP of the league based on his play last season. So it's been that kind of offseason. And then the endorsement, not that he's been a guy who's been ignored by endorsers, by companies that need endorsers, or want them, celebrity endorsers, but he is, the height of that has gone way up, and yet he still seems, and Sean McDermott talked about this, the guy who is grounded, who is approachable, who is genuine. And I sense that in the discussion here, but asking him about it, he's trying to, I guess he was dismissing it. Maybe that's part of it too, of being a genuine guy, is kind of no big deal. It is a big deal, but we're going to look for, I guess, and I say, when I say we, I mean collectively, media, fans, is there going to be any kind of a different Josh when the games are played, or if he's having a day like he had today, is it going to be because, oh yeah, he's got a lot of other things going on off the field?
There were other things happening here at minicamp besides Josh Allen and James Cook. Offensively, what were your eyes on as we went through the afternoon?
Yeah, mainly the receivers, and that nothing in that group really caught my eye or made me think, yeah, they're going to be, this is going to be an impactful group of pass catchers. I'm seeing kind of the same old thing. I'm still seeing, a Coleman looking like he struggles to get open, get separation. He makes those nice jump high catches, but I don't think you make a living doing that. Dalton Kincaid, still waiting to see when is that going to be transformative. Again, yeah, the rough play from Josh and even from the other quarterbacks, Mike White and Mitch Trubisky, didn't help matters either. But overall, I was looking for the things that would tell me offensively the pass catchers are going to help elevate.
And then I was more so focused defensively. Cole Bishop was sort of off to the side working on the bike, so that provided an opportunity for someone to slide in next to Taylor Rapp and get reps. It was mostly Derek Forrest sort of out there with the other guys, and he made a really nice play with one of the interceptions on Josh Allen. So you talk about these sort of moments, mandatory minicamp and training camp, one guy not at practice, opening up an opportunity for someone else. Derek Forrest certainly did that today. And then one other observation is I think we finally saw Joey Bosa sort of on the field getting some on-field work in and everything, which is noticeable as he looks to sort of come back from his injury.
One of the things, and I'll clean it up, as I was joking with Vic how I would actually say this, and we've made this note multiple times after practices this spring. These new defensive linemen are big.
Yes.
They are big. I said a couple other words
yes.
after that on the thing.
Colorful.
They are big.
Colorful
TJ
wording.
Sanders almost made an interception on the field with just getting his mitts up. And you're watching Deion Walker, who Sean McDermott even said, I think he's doing, in my opinion, more than I was anticipating to see him through this portion here, coming off the back injury. I mean, Landon Jackson, these dudes are so big. It no longer does Greg Rousseau stick out like a sore thumb. It's more like the guys that are like an Ed Oliver, who's still 6 feet tall, that look like they're on the JV team.
Yeah, and you heard Josh Allen talk about their size. Again, hard to really gauge the level of performance that's there, but that does stand out, that they're behemoths. There are a lot of big people up front, and maybe that is affecting the way you, even for a tall guy like Josh Allen, to see the field clearly from the pocket. But it'll be interesting to see the progress there. The other thing that was notable today was Sean McDermott mentioning that all the players who have various injuries, the expectation that they would all be ready for training camp. I don't know that that's a blanket thing that we could sit here and count on, especially, say, with Joey Bosa, but maybe that's going to be the case.
You brought up Sean McDermott. One moment of fire from Sean McDermott, I think it's fair to say, towards the end of his press conference when he was asked about playing rookies over veterans and stuff like that, he said, I've played rookies before. I will play a rookie. I will play a veteran. I'm going to play the person who goes out there and earns the playing time. Am I going to put out a rookie out there just to put him out there and then he costs a team because he's not ready or anything? No, but I will go out there and play the player that earns that playing time. And Sean McDermott is normally like a very calm person, but I think it's definitely fair to say there was a little more impassioned answer than all of the other ones in that press conference.
And even if these guys that are off to the side and they're being extra cautious with soft tissues or whatever they may be dealing with, don't just dismiss them not being part of it or the guys that are getting opportunities now. How many guys from a year ago that maybe you had expectations for being impactful weren't, and you can kind of track back to them not being available around this time of the year and around with training camp. I spoke with Curtis Samuel after practice today. He mentioned that foot-toe injury was with him the entire season, and we saw he never got up to speed.
Right.
Cole Bishop was not on the field during training camp last year, and that set him back. We've seen other guys over the course of time that maybe you said, they brought that guy in, he's going to be really good for them. And this portion of the year and the calendar can actually impact them and set them back to the point where maybe not even just the beginning, the entire season is lost.
No, that's an excellent point, John. And the other thing that is in the back of my mind as you're saying that, and as I was watching this team today, one of the noteworthy parts of the 2024-25 season was how healthy this team was. Really remarkably, they had I think they ranked in the highest in the league, or right up there with players being available and not injured. And yet one of the big changes made this offseason was in the strength and conditioning department of this team. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that, because under the previous watch in that position, they were healthy. They were mostly healthy, but even with, like you said, some of the injuries that were nagging players playing through them, that's always going to be the case. The question is those injuries that take people out. This offensive line stayed together the whole year. That's a primary reason why it was one of the better ones in the league. So it will be interesting to see if there are any changes in that regard in terms of the overall health of the team.
And that goes into, Sean McDermott said at this time of the year, one of the priorities is getting healthy, staying healthy. And it even goes into what he said about how this time of the year, you can't necessarily win a Super Bowl, but you can certainly lose it. And I think for maybe on the individual player level, you don't have a successful season or win your season based off of right now, but it can certainly set you back in a significant fashion.
And we have seen that. Bills mandatory minicamp continuing Wednesday as well as Thursday for break leading into training camp. With Vic Carucci and Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.